Introduction of Real Tanka, Part 6. A trad-strewn tanka, an example of Japanese tanka fantastically enhanced by traditional implications, whose English translation, requiring wordy explanation, will naturally go beyond the 57577 word limitations. In 57577 Japanese syllables, 片袖の長めにあくる有明に夢の通い路開く立花。片袖 noun, a single sleeve of my own, used as a handkerchief wet with tears, and a solitary pillow without a lover beside me. No postpositional particle, subject. I sleep on my solitary sleeve without my lover lying beside me. 掛け言葉 start. A. 長め noun, a long gloomy streak of rain. Rain keeps falling down for more than I can stand. B. 長め noun, wistful thought without any fixed focus, especially about love that's somewhat gone awry. I sink deep in thought, wondering where my loveless life will go. 掛け言葉 end. 2. Postpositional particle, circumstance, in the middle of あくる verb, dawn, get bright out of the darkness of night. 有明 noun, a moon in the morn that still remains in the sky as though grumbling, so soon? 2. Postpositional particle, circumstance, in the midst of. As I keep wondering, I'm surprised to find that it's already dawn. The morning moon in the sky looks just as surprised and unsatisfied as myself. 夢 noun, a dream, fantasy. No postpositional particle, possessive, the, of, belonging to. 通い路 noun, the beaten path to somebody, especially leading to a sweetheart's dwelling. 開く verb, open up. 立花 noun, a mandarin orange, whose scent invites one back to memories of good old days, especially those of one's old sweetheart who used to wear the same type of perfume. Suddenly, scent of mandarin orange floats in on the morning air. The same old smell of my past lover's perfume on her sleeves. I feel nostalgic and dreamy. As I fall into a belated sleep, a pathway to my past lover's room opens up and invites me in to her affectionate embrace, although that amorous path has long been closed in reality. Tonight, or this morning, I'll sleep side by side with my dream lover, away from this solitary reality. In 67898, not 57577 English words. Mateless night on a solitary bed, pensively passed with unsatisfied mooning companion. There floats in fragrance of a mandarin orange I used to smell on my past lover's sleeves, opening up a gate into old days' dreams. A 31-word dwarf on the shoulders of 300-year tradition, soaring as a fanciful giant. A poetic dream or a pedantic nightmare. This example poem of mine is the worst possible imagery of a tradition-dependent imitation without any creative contribution of its own. A shamefully shallow sham whose shitty profusion in the later years of Heianese Japan heralded in the practical extinction of the once glorious tanka poetry in this country. This type of poetry, or rather a shamelessly blatant imitative pedantry, was the main target of the no-quarter criticism from that realism evangelist poet Masaoka Shiki in the Meiji era. And he was quite right in attacking such shitty borrowers from great ancestors' tradition. Tsurayuki teika no soko o shaburu. Those who keep sucking the sledge left by Kino Tsurayuki or Fujiwara no Teika, as he says. Although he simply went too far in his overall denial of fictionally dramatic poems and totally biased acclaim to straightforward tanka in the Nara era, in preference to nobly sophisticated Heianese poems. Well, let's forget about Masaoka Shiki and let us turn back the clock of literary chronograph, back to the end of the Heian era Japan circa 1200, 3 centuries after the literary Big Bang, ignited by the first imperial all-Japanese poetic anthology, Kokin Wakashu. For Japanese tanka, 300 years of accumulated works was a treasury of traditional implications on one hand, and sludge and grudge on the other. How rich is a traditionally implied imagination, you may see from the explanations I offered for the poem above. Shall we re-examine? Trad image 1, Katasode, implies a sad and lonely night spent without a sweetheart. Trad image 2, Nagame, implies a long, aimless thought about uncertain future of oneself, especially in the middle of a love going wrong. Trad image 3, Ariake, implies 2 kinds of dawn. A. After a night of making love with a sweetheart that ended all too abruptly before getting 100% satisfaction. B. After staying awake all night, all alone, waiting for someone to come, or wondering where I or we should go. Trad image 4, Yume no kayoiji, implies a lonely person's dream, which is the only means of meeting someone whom that person is dying to meet in reality, in vain. Trad image 5, Tachibana, implies the scent of an old sweetheart's perfume. See how much is said in so few words. Traditionally implied imagery is a great expander of the physical limitations of no more than 31 words. Not unlike the good old EMM386.exe that benignly enabled Windows users to go beyond the walls of 640 kilobyte memory limitations of MS-DOS. Oh, forget it if I'm losing you. Trad imagery is a world within world, a window to another dimension, and a cure for readers to conjure up famous episodes out of their own literary memories to help build up the poem much higher than its literal size. By resorting to these traditionally fostered associations, Japanese tanka can dream a multi-layered dream, and the 31-word dwarf can grow out of its physical limitation by the reader's imagination into something much more fascinatingly substantial. Substantial because tradition said so much. Fascinating because your own imaginative association said so. But Traditional imagery is a double-edged sword. It cuts out the limitations of a 31-word boundary of Tanka into another dimension. But it also cuts down and hurts the pride of those who can't make heads or tails out of it. Those who couldn't would hold a grudge against it and would dismiss such traditional imagery as a 300-year sludge, just like Masaoka Shiki did. Thus has been dismissed the age-old tradition of Japanese Tanka's magically evoked imagination up until today. Western civilization has no kick against traditionally fostered side stories. This type of traditional association can be more abundantly found in the world of English than in Japanese. Let's see if you can see what I'm saying in the following example. A counterpart example of English Tanka 57577 words requiring lots of cultural background knowledge that can only be translated into Japanese Tanka in its simplest essence without regard to respective implications of the original verse. In 57577 English words, what a brave new world! Confer 1. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, 1932. 2. Tempest, Act 5, Scene 1. Oh, wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is! Oh, brave new world that has such people in it! By William Shakespeare, circa 1612. With some big brother always watching you. Confer 1984 by George Orwell, 1948. Who could be a Superman? Confer Superman by Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster in DC Comics, first in Action Comics since June 1938. With so little privacy in public telephone booths. Confer Clark Kent usually transforms himself into Superman behind something to hide in, traditionally public telephone booths. Wayne will remain Bruce and play no Batman. Confer Batman by Bob Kane, Bill Finger in DC Comics since May 1939. Batman's true identity is a playboy billionaire Bruce Wayne. Did you see all the message? An average American wouldn't have missed Superman and Batman-related imagery. Big Brother is watching you is also likely to have rang a bell, for it's actually on the way to becoming a dire reality in today's world, where street surveillance cameras and cell phone cameras of practically every citizen are always watching you. But what about a brave new world? A world infested with test tube-born citizens is far enough from today's reality, and as far from ordinary people's literary repertoire, I'd guess. Anyway, such association-rich sentences, whether in verse or prose, are nothing extraordinary in the Western civilization, where the traditional imagery fostered around Greek mythology, the Bible, literary works, pop song lyrics, catchy lines from films or TVs are at once colorful accessories to add to prosaic contents, and also cultural litmus paper to prove that the reader, hearer, had something culturally in common with the author. Cultural identity is something to be thus tested and cultivated in the Western civilization, which is essentially heterogeneous. The uniquely homogeneous people of Japan, on the other hand, traditionally hated, yes, I say hated, this type of cultural identity test, for it seems to be asserting yourself something different from the rest, when they take it as a self-evident fact that all Japanese are equal and no different from each other. The rich poetic association fostered in the circle of Japanese TANKA over 3 centuries of literary accumulation was a rare exception to this rule. But the Japanese hate exceptions. The fact that Japanese TANKA was the exclusive product of the noble men and women in and around Japanese imperial court added to the hatred of such traditionally accumulated imagery among ordinary Japanese. And it must also be pointed out that the court ladies and gentlemen in the later years of the Heian era resorted too heavily to such traditional imagery just to show off how elegantly literate and nobly distinguished they were. In consequence, even today, the Japanese positively hate cultural sophistication as individual accomplishment, even though they aggressively seek to make themselves look sophisticated by dressing themselves up with fashionable clothes or up-to-date gadgets. And so it is that the association-rich English poem above would be impossible to translate into Japanese in its cultural entirety, only to end up in a matter-of-fact explanation devoid of any reference to Bruce Wayne, Batman, Superman, or Big Brother. See what a brief new world of 31-word Japanese interpretation it will dwindle into. In 57577 Japanese syllables, Nantaru yo, shujin kanshi, hiro mo, henshin dekiru monokage mo nashi. In 357 Magnum, 357 Minimum English. What a world! There's people watching here everywhere. There's no hiding for superheroes to transform. These example poems of mine should have shown you some reasons why the Japanese positively hate rich literary tradition and quite shy of the potentially profound and so hateful 31-word world of Tanka, only to favor the relatively implication-free world of 17-word haiku. Japan is a strange country indeed. So tradition-rich and so culturally poor. Oh, wonder how many great creations have there been here, but how shallow the current Japanese are. Oh, grave Oriental island, which has such people in it. Should you want to meet the brave old world of authentic Tanka, never look around the 21st century Japan, but go back in time to the poetry's happy days in the 10th to 13th centuries, with special care against trad-strewn wrapping around empty wording, though.